Good morning and welcome to today's webinar. Today I'm pleased to welcome Jane and Karl, who have come along to help me today, as they have expert knowledge of PFO closures from a stroke survivor point of view. So hello Jane, hello Karl. This is the latest in our 2024 webinar series. So if you've joined us in previous webinars, welcome again. If not, it's good to see you if it's your first time. We are running these every so often over the next few months, so keep an eye out for the next one, and I'll tell you about the latest one at the end of today. So we're going to run through what actually sort of happened to Karl and Jane, what their stroke story was, going through the PFO closure, the experience of on the day, if you like. As we said in the brief for the webinar, nobody is a medical professional and everyone's situation is different due to our own medical our own medical backgrounds and what have you. So one size doesn't fit all, but Karl and Jane are here because it's a question that constantly gets asked is, what's it like? What happens on the day, etc., etc. It seems to be different around the country. Again, different hospital trusts. Some are quicker at getting these things done. Some do it completely different, but this will become evident as Karl and Jane are going through their story. We do have a chat function if you want to introduce yourselves to the others in the webinar. There's a Q&A function at the bottom as well. So if you've got any questions, please put them in there. Because if they go in the chat, then they are likely to get missed because they might get swallowed up in general chit chat. But please, any questions, put them in the Q&A and we'll try and get through as many as possible at the end of the session. It's been recorded, this session, so it will be available to watch back at your leisure and be available for others. So for all of you that signed up for today, you will get notification of when it's ready to watch on our YouTube channel as well. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to Karl and Jane. Karl, I think you're going to go first today.
Certainly am.
Okay, go.
What were we talking about again? Hi, I'm Karl. Some of you may know me from the Zoom meetings we've had where I'm one of the facilitators. Give a bit of background. In 2018, on July 31st, I woke up paralysed down the left-hand side, and after a hospital visit, it was diagnosed with a stroke. I was 39 at the time, so a bit of a shock. I was fit, healthy, and yeah, it wasn't ideal. And then 2 days later, I had another one, which starburst, so it actually damaged quite a bit of my, even though I haven't got much damage in my brain, because it starburst, it's affected quite a few areas, which has left me with severe fatigue, cognitive fatigue. So I just get overwhelmed with noises and concentration. I was a police officer and had been medically retired, which wasn't ideal. But fast forward 6 years, I've got 90% of my mobility on my left side, and unfortunately, anything just holding me back is the fatigue. But so, after my stroke, I had, like everyone has, a series of tests, from numerous blood tests, hundreds of vials, it felt like, checking everything. One of the ones which I also had was a bubble test, which some of you may have had already, but if you haven't, it's quite a unique experience. You go into a doctor or go into the hospital with someone with an ultrasound, and basically you put a saline saline solution into you, but before they do that, they give it a good old shake, so there's lots of bubbles in it, which is quite terrifying when you always see these films of like trying to kill people. They put bubbles into stuff and then inject you. So I had that. I had to lie on my side and basically get cuddled by a cardiologist whilst they scan your chest, and whilst they squeeze this saline solution into me. As they're doing that, they get you to bear down, so straining, so it causes if you have a PFO to open up because of the pressure changes in the heart. And mine looked like a soda stream it was really weird because you can see it on the screen and you can see all the bubbles rushing through from um, the, the vein side of into the arterial side, which is what we don't really want that to happen. So I started feeling quite dizzy as well because I've had all these extra bubbles going into my brain and everything like that. And the person doing the scan got a little bit like, oh, we're not doing, normally I think they do 3. And it was so much came through on the first one. They were like, yeah, we're not doing it anymore because it could be a bit dangerous. So from that, it was quite clearly I had a PFO. Also with the scan, they noticed I had an ASA, which is an arterial septum aneurysm. And as soon as you hear the word aneurysm again, it's quite scary, but actually it just means there's a flap of skin which goes into the heart where you imagine that there's basically it should be a sealed PFO opens up, and this bit kind of opens up and flaps around. And it's quite common that you have a PFO and an ASA at the same time. So from that, I was then, this is all 2000, I think it's about 2018, at the back end of November, back end of August time, I think, like this thing. This is at the time when PFOs weren't closed on the NHS. So we looked at going private, we looked at other things, but luckily my trust, in Tunbridge in Kent, so we're in the Kent and Sussex hospital trust, I think it is, and they had a link with St Thomas Hospital, the cardiology department. And long story short, my file went up to them, and there's a board, and they decided that I was suitable due to my age, my health, to have a closure. So I finally got a letter through. Got my notes in. Let's have a quick look. It was probably the start of January. Oh no, that was it. August. I finally got I was on holiday and I got a letter come through we came back, and I had an appointment to get to St Thomas to see Dr. Clapp in the cardiology department. Get there, have more tests. I think I had blood tests. I had another heart scan. I didn't need to have another bubble scan because it was quite obvious I had one. And he's a really nice bloke, and he just sat down and explained to me the concerns that if you don't have it done, or outweighs if you do have it done. Showed me the device, which is like this weird little small umbrella. Explains the procedure, and he said, oh, I'll put you on the waiting list. So from that, so that's August 2019, and on the 11th of November, I had my closure at St Thomas Hospital. I had to get there early. I think it was there. I live probably about an hour and a half away from St Thomas, so I had to be there at like 8 o'clock in the morning. Had an overnight bag just in case I had to stay overnight. We go in, I said, going to this wards, and it's really weird. You got people there having pacemakers and the open heart surgery, all having these surgeries in this day, and there's me with just this PFO just procedure. So that's quite weird. The only benefit from the hospital is it's got these stunning views over the River Thames, and it overlooks Parliament, which was quite cool to look out of. When I get there, have a few more tests, wait, speak to the anaesthetist, because I should have said this before. Dr. Clapp, I didn't need to have a tow. So normally you have a trans obstacle explorer. So I'm sure Jane will describe what that is. Um, and he said to me, he said, I don't bother getting it done beforehand because he says I like to have it, you do it under full genuine anesthetic. He says that way I can give you a tow and a scan internally, and he said it just makes things easier for me. So I ended up having a full genuine anesthetic. So I got there, I was saying, spoke to niece test, get changed into those lovely gowns where your bum flashes everyone as you're walking around, and then I was got walked. I walked to the cath lab, which was just around the corner, and it was really weird. It's like a big room. It's got loads of screens all over it, and X-ray machines, and there's quite a few members of staff and a bed. So I kind of plonked myself down, and then they put me to sleep. And like that was it. And then literally, and I woke up in the recovery room, which was bizarre. Woke up in the recovery room. Nurses were brilliant. My heart rate felt weird, like fluttering the whole time. My chest felt odd. And probably I was in there for a good hour, and then after that, everything all calmed down. I think that's just a combination of how they do the procedure. Should they make a little incision, and they basically feed this line all the way up from your groin all the way into your heart. So I think your heart gets a little bit agitated because it's not used to having things put in it. Um, After that, got wheeled back into the ward, and I think I can't remember the exact times, but I think you can't move for a good 2 hours, and you're just laying on your back, and it's really boring, and you can't move because if you move around, you dislodge any of the clots and all that, which have been put was to stop you from bleeding from the incision they've done. So finally, every of my 2 hours are up. I then get wheeled to another room, and they perform another scan of the heart just to make sure the device is seated correctly in the heart. And then I had something to eat, and then they sent me home. So I was there, I think about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I was finally sent home, which was a nice surprise because at one point they said there's always a chance you have to stay overnight, but then I got a taxi back to where the car was parked, and then my wife drove me all the way home. Um, and that's where it got quite interesting. As I don't want to be too graphic, but by the time I got back to my house, I could feel blood seeping through to my jeans, my trousers, all the way through. So it was a little bit scary. So the first thing I did when I got back in was lay on my bed, and my wife put direct pressure straight on the incision, even though it's absolutely tiny. And after about 20 minutes, it had all stopped bleeding and everything was all fine. And at that point, I had a nice little rest. Um, Woke up the next morning, day one, and started moving around. I was quite sore, as you could imagine. Um, Heart rate, I kept getting palpitations, which is a really common side effect. So I was literally like palpitations all the time, like every few hours. I was on aspirin as well as clopidogrel, on which you have to start. I was on for 6 months, maybe less. I can't remember. It was a while ago. I can't remember quite why. Just to protect you from any clots coming through to the system. And over the next few days, lots of bruising out around the groin, which is quite a spectacular bruise. No more bleeding, which was good. And then the palpitations probably, I said after a few days, it just really calmed down. And over a period of time, probably, so this was November, I had it done, and come Christmas, I was getting maybe one set palpitations once every few weeks. And since that Christmas, it was totally calmed down. I haven't had anything since. The worst thing for me was the actual general anaesthetic. It really wiped me out, and I was really fatigued, like sleeping all the time and waking up and feeling like I hadn't slept. My brain was all over the place, and that probably took me probably the longest to recover from that was probably about 2 weeks. And after that, I started feeling much better. I started running again, which was good. At the time, I think I just signed up to do a sponsored run for different strokes, so I was starting to get running again. Unfortunately, what I said to the cardiologist, it doesn't make you fitter or stronger. And he said you don't become like a superhuman afterwards. He said the way the heart works, it doesn't make any difference in your fitness and your strength. So I was slightly disappointed because I thought I was going to be able to run like Usain Bolt at one point, but that didn't quite work out. And yeah, after that, I had a referral back after a year. That was in the middle of COVID, so that was quite interesting, traveling through London all masked up, just to have a scan. And that showed my PFO had been closed. I spoke to the consultant, and he said it's up to me if I want to carry on with clopidogrel. But he did say if it was him, he said I would bout and brace. He called it bout and braces. So he said you've had the closure, and he said you might if he would recommend that I would stay on clopidogrel for the rest of my life. So that's what I'm on now, and that was the last time I saw him. So, and that's 4 years. What would be 3-4 years ago now since I've had the closure, and touch wood, everything is working fine, and yeah, all good. Back to you, Sheila.
Excellent. Can I just ask, did your PFO show up in any of the other tests until you had the bubble test? Was that the first time it showed up, or did they get a hint of it before?
They didn't have a hint of it, but what he's because I had like zero fat, I was probably one of the fittest I was in my life at that point. I don't smoke. I drink, but nothing to excess. And he said, I've got a feeling it will be this. And they done the initial heart scans. It doesn't really come up until you start bearing down. I think, but as I said, like everyone's different. Some people it may be so large that you can see it quite easily. But yeah, until I had the bubble test, that was the first time. But they had an inkling that the most likely cause due to my risk factors.
Okay, thank you. Wow. It's quite scary in one way, but it's quite reassuring for those about to go through it that, you know, you can go through it and come out the other end. So over to Jane now for her story.
Thank you. Thanks, Karl. Yeah. I think mine was a very similar situation to Karl's. I had my stroke back in just a year and a half ago, so in January 23. I felt really sick on Friday, very unusual for me. Ended up not being able to go into work, just feeling really dizzy, really sick, had no idea, thought I'd picked up a virus or something. Went to sleep that night, got up the Saturday morning, and that was it. Couldn't hardly walk. I was trying to speak to my husband, but he couldn't understand what I was saying. He rang 111, and I thought, oh, here we go, 3-hour wait for anybody to turn up. And ambulance turned up in about 15 minutes, took a look at me and said, we're going to blue light you in to hospital straight away, and said I was having a stroke, which totally out of the blue. Similar, had no history, high blood pressure, no cholesterol issues, relatively fit, never smoked, not diabetic. So we had to try and find the cause of it. Whilst I was in hospital, had the CTs and MRIs, which also showed up I'd had 2 previously, apparently, at least 2, and they said it's quite common to have asymptomatic strokes and not realise you've had them. So they did an echocardiogram bubble contrast test, the same as Karl. So that was wheeled in, and they did it there and then while I was in the hospital. So wheeled me into a room, lots of gel and an injection. But that didn't show any particular sign that there was any clear evidence of a PFO. So they then suggested it would be a good idea for me to have the toe, a closer look, which is a camera down your throat, to get nearer to the heart and see if there is any gaps there that haven't showed up on the bubble test. In the meantime, whilst I've been rushed into the hospital, a nurse had also said to me, would I be willing to take part in a research study with the Thames Valley Young Stroke study that they were doing. So I just sort of said yes in all the chaos, not thinking much of it. But in between being released from the hospital, I was in there for a couple of days. They contacted me to come up to John Radcliffe and do a morning's worth of study. So they did absolutely everything, measurements and heart races and memory tests and you name it, they did it as part of their study. But one of the things that they did was a bubble transcranial Doppler, which she said is much more sensitive test. So that was putting a strap around my brain with a sound wave recorder on it, and saying they put an intravenous strip in with saline and bubbles, and that shows the sound waves. And she said from the sounds that she could see, it was very clear there was a hole there. So she was then able to recommend back to Buckinghamshire Council, who it's Buckinghamshire Health Authority who I'm with, that she had a strong suspicion was a PFO. So then I also had got my appointment through for a toe in March. So I went into hospital there. That was a strange anaesthetic that they put in your mouth that tastes of bananas. It's weird. And they put a pipe down your throat and they can take a closer look. And that then showed, yes, there was definitely some kind of gap because there was blood flowing through a shunt. They got arterial shunt, blood throws through the chambers that it shouldn't be. So then I was put forward to have a closure. In Buckinghamshire, that came through very quickly, but it was very strange because I'd been to Oxford and she suggested I had one and sent the letter to Buckinghamshire. I kind of fell between two counties. So it was on about the Thursday. I got a phone call saying, would I come in on Tuesday for a closure? And I'd be the first one to have it done at Wickham, which at the time I was a little bit anxious about, but they reassured me that the consultants had done plenty of closures. It was just the first time at that hospital. So that made me feel a little bit better. And I didn't have much time to worry about it because it was going to be happening in the next few days. And I certainly think the worry beforehand is worse than the actual procedure, because I was similar to Karl. I had to get there for about 7 in the morning. There was a bit of a wait, I guess, while they get all the schedules and things together. I went in probably about 10 and I was still awake when I went in. And for me, they just gave me a mild sedative. But it is literally a tiny little slit at the top of your groin. The one thing I might say, which I think I've been asked before about shaving beforehand, it's best to do that at home generally yourself, I would think. I've read before, I think probably on the website, that's a better idea to do that so that you can feel more comfortable. So we did all that and it went in and there was a tiny incision, I think 10 mil long at the top of your leg. Pipe up, deploy this strange little thing on either side of the hole that closes it. They'd identified mine was 12 to 13 millimeter gap, so they put a 14 millimeter disc in. Pulled the pipe back out again, gave me something to wake me back up whilst I was still in the room. So as Karl said, it's amazing. It's like being in a spaceship. You can see huge screens and everything, and on the screen they showed me my x-ray so I could see my backbone and I could see the catheter thing going in and the thing being deployed. I was fascinated by it all. Wheeled me back into the ward and yeah, had to lie still, not move for I think mine was 3 hours. And yeah, so you don't bleed out and everything has time to settle down. But then they just said, okay, you can go home. So I rang hubby, came and picked me up, and I was back home the same afternoon, which was great. Yeah, the bruising is quite spectacular at the top of your groin because you're on thinners and goodness knows what as well. I think that probably doesn't help, but yeah, that was quite a look. But that was about all I had. So it was gentle, just walking around the house for the first day. Second day, you can still get back to normal activity as long as there's nothing too strenuous. And so it was very, very quick recovery. That was in July, mine was, so I had to wait from the January, having a stroke, had the closure in July. We went to Anglesey in August, where the South Stack Lighthouse is 400 steps literally to the lighthouse and 100 steps up it. Managed that there and back, no problem. The disappointing thing is you're not Superwoman afterwards. You're hoping that you've got all these years with a defect, which meant that's why you didn't win that 800-meter race, because you had a hole in your heart. But sadly, it's not. It didn't make that much difference for me. And I've not had any side effects or anything afterwards. I didn't really have any palpitation or anything. They said you might feel a slight stabbing pain or something where the disc, again, I've not had anything like that, so it's been fine. The one thing I haven't had is a follow-up. So I had the closure in July, and they said 6 months later I should go. I think they do another echo just to check it had sealed all fine, which should have been January. So I chased that, and coincidentally got a message yesterday saying that would happen this month. At the end of this month, I'm going to have the follow-up, which is good. As far as medication was concerned, so they said to take the clopidogrel and aspirin for 6 months, and then I could just go on to aspirin. So now I just have an aspirin every day. And I had a 1-year phone consultation, and he said potentially if there aren't any issues with me having the aspirin, then to carry that on for the next 5 years, and then I should be able to stop. So for me, it was peace of mind that finally, hopefully, I can't guarantee it, but that was the reason for the stroke, because I've been perfectly fit beforehand. And hopefully that now gives me some peace of mind that it's closed and nothing else is going to wander through and affect my brain.
Thank you, Jane. It must be reassuring to have the procedure done and you've got some closure on it. We've got a question. I don't know if you maybe want to answer this one, Karl. What was the bubble test? Can you go through that again, please?
So the bubble test is they basically use an ultrasound scan of the heart. And what they're looking for is to see if bubbles transfer from one side of the heart. So basically the heart's into 2 chambers. One with the arterial blood goes to the brain and feeds the oxygen. And then the other side has, I can't remember what the word is, basically all your carbon dioxide and everything like that then feeds back through to the lungs. So it gets expelled and then it then transfers back over into the heart. So when you get with the PFO, when you come out of the womb, when you have the umbilical cord, it's always open because you're basically on the same blood supply as your mother. So when it closes, when you cut it, in theory it should seal up, but I think 1 in 4 people it doesn't actually seal up. So what they're doing with this bubble test, they put a saline solution which has got, they shake it up so it's got bubbles, and they put it into your veins. So in theory, it shouldn't be crossing over to the arterial side. And it will, as they scan it, you have to bear down, so kind of straining. So you have to strain, and it causes the pressure to change in the heart, which causes, if there isn't sealed, it will cause it to flap open, and you can physically see on the heart scan the bubbles coming from one side to the other side of the chamber. As I said, some people you have 1 or 2. Mine looked like a soda stream coming through, which was a little bit concerning. So yeah, and that's basically what a bubble scan is. It's just yeah, that's it really.
Excellent, thank you. Well, we've had some questions come in before today, so we'll just go through a few of them. Some of them we can't answer because they're for medical professionals, or it would depend on people's individual medical circumstances. So we've had one about a nickel allergy. Neither Jane or Karl know anything about this, so again, that's one for a medical professional. we've got one about which is the best closure. Again, it will depend on your own medical circumstances, so ask your medical professionals. Do you know how the medics decide whether to close or not to close? Again, individual circumstances, so you'd have to discuss this with medical professionals. Does the PFO affect your heart rate variability? Again, it's down to individual circumstances, I think. Either someone's asked about vertigo. Jane didn't have vertigo before. Karl, I'm assuming you're the same.
No.
So, again, you'd have to go back or ask the question in the Facebook group to see if anyone has had vertigo. The blood thinner question. Karl and Jane have already explained their personal circumstances. From reading comments on the Facebook group, I think every consultant's different, every hospital trust is different, and again, it depends on your own individual circumstances. And again, how soon could you raise your heart rate high? That will depend on individual circumstances, so you'll have to go by what your consultant advises you to do for that. They've discussed the side effects of the procedure as well. And we've had one question. I'm not sure if this lady was just in Florida on holiday and is in the UK or is in the US. And when she had her stroke, PFOs weren't done, and they want to know if recommendations have changed. It could be personal circumstances. It could be where you are, US, UK. It could be when you had it. So again, I would advise you to go to your GP or medical professional to get that answered. Let me see what questions we've had. Hi, Karl, very similar story to you. Had the PFO closure in April, keen to get that running. Do you use heart rate to train, and do you know what problems to look out for?
And I think there's a few more there, so I can probably cover all these in one hit. Another question was asked regarding prior to the surgery about exercise and asking if I got a car detailing device and if I wear a medical bracelet. Obviously, it's all individual circumstances. Again, I'm not medical trained, but for my experience, for myself, when I started running again, I've got a Garmin, so I used a heart rate tracker, and I try to not go over a certain amount. At which kind, as I said, as for problems to look out for, like anything with any running, if you're fit and healthy, you should just make sure you're not overexerting yourself all the time. I have got I don't even see it, a medical bracelet that sits on my Garmin, which has got all my details on, which is quite good. Prior to the surgery, this is one I did ask at the time to the cardiologist, and again, I've put that caveat of not medically trained, but he told me not to run marathons, which at that point I was laughing because no one in a million years I'd be able to run a marathon. And also don't do weight training. He said don't do weight training because as you strain, it causes the PFO to open up. Also, don't scuba dive, and that's from my cousin's a cardiologist who works in Australia, and a lot of the PFOs they find out there is when people are scuba diving. So again, it's to do with the pressure changes in the heart as you scuba dive. I don't know why, but apparently it causes the hole to open up. So I think I covered those 4 questions in one hit.
Excellent, thank you.
Just on the medical device, and Carl's got one. I was given the car. When I saw that, but I'd forgotten about this. So when I had the procedure, they then gave me this card which says it's cocoon septal ocular, which I've got to carry around with me. And I'm just reading the notes that it's got a little QR code and things on it. Because I think there is metal in whatever it is that they close it with. So they're saying about having MRI, you could still have MRI, even though you've got this device inside you, but you carry this card thing around with you now to say you've had this closure.
You're
Is
not
that
the
on
first
your medical
person
plan?
that's got those. I don't know if I slip through the cracks. I'm slightly
Oh,
worried about that now. I
yeah,
may
well,
chase it up.
I wondered if the airport things would go up and walk through, but they didn't.
No, I didn't. No.
Again, it might just be different
Yeah,
hospitals
different
do
health
different
authorities.
things.
It could be even the device. I got
Yeah.
a feeling I Googled it and it may be different device. I'm not sure if my device has certain stuff in it. So maybe that's, I don't know.
It doesn't mention nickel though anywhere from the other question. You might get one of them.
Well, if anybody's got any more questions, get them in the last few minutes, or email us at info@differentstrokes.co.uk. We've also got a blog that you can search for on the website if you just put in PFO closures, and it's several other stroke survivors talking about their experiences as well. We'd also be grateful for your feedback today. So if you can stay online after the session ends, there's just a few questions. Be very quick to complete, and we'd be most grateful for that. Our next free webinar is going to take place on Monday, the 16th of September, where we will be looking at the Access to Work government scheme. So we've got Joanna McRae from Page Group to talk to us about it. And we've also got a stroke survivor who's used the Access to Work scheme as well. So she's got the reality of it all. So keep an eye on the website and social media to see where you can sign up for that one. And once again, many thanks to Karl and Jane for a fantastic session. And we look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheila. Thank you, Jane.